The Vatican controls $15 billion in assets. But what if I told you that for decades, God's own bank was secretly funding the most brutal criminal empire in modern history? Between 1960 and 1982, the Banco Ambrosiano channeled over $1.3 billion in dirty money through Vatican accounts. That's more cash than Pablo Escobar moved through his entire cocaine empire. We're talking about Vatican priests laundering money for Sicilian hitmen who dissolved victims in acid baths. But what nobody knows is how a humble Italian banker became the bridge between heaven and hell. How Roberto Calvi, known as God's banker, turned papal finances into a criminal ATM machine. How Vatican cardinals blessed murder money while taking communion. The secret behind this unholy alliance wasn't just greed, it was something far more sinister, a desperate attempt to save the Catholic Church from total financial collapse. What started as creative accounting became the largest money laundering operation in European history. This is the story of how sacred vows were broken for blood money, how Swiss bank accounts hid Sicilian sins, how the Vatican's most trusted financial advisor ended up hanging from London's Blackfriars Bridge with bricks stuffed in his pockets. You think you know about corruption? You think you understand how organized crime operates? This story will shatter everything you believe about both the Catholic Church and the Italian-American Mafia. Because when God's representatives start washing money for the devil's disciples, the line between salvation and damnation disappears completely. What you're about to discover is darker than any mob movie, more shocking than any financial scandal. This is the true story of how Vatican City became the world's holiest crime syndicate, how prayer books hid ledger books, how papal blessings covered Mafia curses. The trail of bodies leads straight to the Vatican's front door, and the smoking gun isn't a weapon. It's a bank statement signed by a man who claimed to represent God on earth. Roberto Calvi died owning banks in 16 countries, controlling assets worth $20 billion, and holding financial secrets that could topple governments. His empire stretched from Vatican City to the Bahamas, from Milan to Miami. When investigators finally cracked open his network, they discovered the largest money laundering operation in modern history. But Roberto Calvi started as a nobody. Born in 1920 in Milan to a bank manager father and a devout Catholic mother, young Roberto seemed destined for a quiet life counting other people's money. He was short, balding, and spoke with a nervous stutter that made him seem harmless. His early banking career at Banco Ambrosiano was unremarkable, filing papers, processing routine transactions, staying late to balance books that always balanced. The gap between this timid accountant and the man who would become God's banker seems impossible to cross. How does a stuttering clerk end up controlling more cash flow than most nations? How does a devout Catholic become the financial mastermind behind murder, extortion, and international conspiracy? What made Calvi different wasn't ambition or greed. It was timing and access, and a friendship that would damn his soul. In 1962, a charismatic American bishop named Paul Marcinkus arrived in Vatican City. Standing 6'4" with shoulders like a linebacker, Marcinkus looked more like a bodyguard than a priest, which was exactly what Pope Paul VI needed. As violence erupted across Europe and assassination attempts on papal figures increased, the Vatican required someone who could protect both the Pope's life and the Church's money. Marcinkus understood that the Catholic Church faced an existential financial crisis. After World War II, traditional church investments in European property and government bonds were hemorrhaging money. Inflation was destroying fixed-income assets. Communist governments were seizing church properties across Eastern Europe. The Vatican needed new revenue streams, and they needed them fast. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, another empire was expanding rapidly. The American Mafia, flush with cash from gambling, narcotics, and labor racketeering, faced their own problem. What to do with mountains of dirty money that couldn't be deposited in legitimate American banks? FBI surveillance was tightening. Traditional money laundering routes through Cuba had been cut off after Castro's revolution. They needed somewhere safe, discreet, and beyond the reach of US law enforcement. Vatican City represented the perfect solution. As an independent nation-state, it operated outside normal banking regulations. Vatican financial institutions enjoyed diplomatic immunity from foreign oversight. Money moved through papal accounts, faced minimal scrutiny from Italian authorities who maintained a respectful distance from church affairs. But connecting these two worlds required a bridge. Someone who understood both sacred and profane finances. Someone who could speak the language of priests and criminals with equal fluency. Someone trusted by cardinals and capos alike. Roberto Calvi became that bridge. Through a series of seemingly innocent business relationships, he began facilitating transactions between Vatican institutions and mysterious offshore entities. What started as small favors, processing wire transfers, establishing shell companies, managing currency exchanges, gradually evolved into something much larger and more dangerous. By 1965, Calvi was personally handling over $100 million in annual transactions for Marcinkus. Cash flowed from Swiss accounts to Panamanian corporations, to Bahamian banks, to Vatican coffers. The money trail was so complex that even experienced financial investigators couldn't follow it completely. The beauty of the system was its legitimacy facade. Every transaction appeared proper on paper: donations to Catholic charities, investments in Vatican-approved enterprises, loans to promote Christian values in developing nations. But underneath these holy descriptions, a different reality operated. You see, this wasn't just about moving money. It was about creating a parallel financial universe where normal rules didn't apply, where criminal proceeds became charitable contributions, where murder contracts became consulting fees, where Mafia profits became Vatican investments. What most people don't know is that this arrangement saved the Catholic Church from bankruptcy. Without dirty money flowing through Vatican accounts, the Church couldn't have maintained its global operations, couldn't have funded missionary work, couldn't have preserved its political influence across dozens of nations. Behind the success was a simple recognition: evil money spends exactly like good money. And God's representatives were willing to look the other way as long as the deposits kept flowing. This wasn't just about corruption, it was about survival. The Catholic Church had survived Roman persecution, Protestant reformations, and 2 world wars. Church leaders were determined not to let modern financial realities destroy what armies and revolutions couldn't touch. But to understand how Vatican priests became willing accomplices to mass murder, we need to go back to where it all started. To a small office in Milan, where a nervous banker first learned that some accounts were more sacred than others. Let me take you back to 1963, when Roberto Calvi made a decision that would baptize him in blood money and transform him into the most dangerous man in European banking. Chapter 1. Holy Money. God's work requires earthly resources. That's what Archbishop Paul Marcinkus told Roberto Calvi during their first private meeting in 1963. They met in a cramped office above Banco Ambrosiano's main branch in Milan. Outside, Italian workers were striking again, protesters filling the streets with anti-capitalist slogans. Inside, 2 men discussed how to merge heaven and hell into a profitable enterprise. Calvi had been summoned to this meeting without explanation. His hands trembled as he spread financial documents across the scarred wooden desk. The Archbishop towered over him, cigarette smoke curling around his massive frame like incense around an altar. "Your bank handles Vatican accounts," Marcinkus said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, Your Excellency. We process routine transfers for several Catholic charities and..." "Routine transfers," Marcinkus laughed, a sound like gravel in a cement mixer. "Nothing about Vatican finances is routine, my friend. We're not talking about Sunday collection plates here." What Calvi discovered in the next 2 hours changed everything he thought he knew about money, morality, and the Catholic Church. The Vatican was broke. Not poor, broke. Church investments had lost $47 million in 1962 alone. Traditional revenue streams from property rentals and government bonds were disappearing as European socialism expanded. The Vatican museums, despite attracting millions of tourists, barely covered their operating costs. Meanwhile, church expenses continued growing exponentially. Supporting 1.3 billion Catholics worldwide required massive financial resources. Funding missionary work across Africa and Asia, maintaining diplomatic missions in 180 countries, operating schools, hospitals, and charitable organizations on every continent. The Vatican employed over 100,000 people directly and supported millions more through church-funded programs. "We need $200 million annually just to maintain current operations," Marcinkus explained, stubbing out his cigarette. "Do you know what the Vatican's legitimate income was last year? $73 million. We're running a $127 million deficit, and it's getting worse every year." Calvi studied the numbers with growing amazement. The Catholic Church, the world's oldest and most powerful religious institution, was financially dying. Vatican City maintained the appearance of wealth through centuries-old art collections and property holdings, but liquid assets were vanishing rapidly. "The Pope knows about these shortfalls?" Calvi asked. "Pope Paul VI prays for divine intervention. I prefer more practical solutions." Marcinkus outlined his vision for Vatican financial independence. Rather than relying on declining donations and failing investments, the Church would become an active participant in global banking. Vatican City's unique legal status as an independent nation provided opportunities unavailable to traditional financial institutions. Money deposited in Vatican accounts enjoyed protection from foreign government oversight. Transactions processed through Vatican banks fell outside normal regulatory frameworks. Currency exchanges conducted within Vatican City operated beyond the jurisdiction of Italian financial authorities. "Think of it as ecclesiastical banking," Marcinkus said. "We serve clients who value discretion above all else." What kind of clients value discretion above all else? Calvi was about to find out. The first special deposits began flowing into Banco Ambrosiano accounts within weeks of that initial meeting. Cash arrived from Switzerland in diplomatic pouches that couldn't be searched by customs officials. Wire transfers originated from Panamanian shell companies with names like Divine Providence Holdings and Sacred Heart Investments. The amounts were staggering. Individual deposits of $5 million, $10 million, sometimes $20 million. Money that arrived without supporting documentation, without source verification, without questions. Calvi processed these transactions personally, keeping separate ledgers that never appeared in official bank records. By December 1963, Banco Ambrosiano was handling over $50 million monthly in Vatican special accounts. The money flowed out just as mysteriously as it flowed in, to numbered Swiss accounts, to offshore corporations, to cash purchases of gold and precious stones. Calvi soon realized he wasn't just processing Vatican money. He was laundering proceeds from American organized crime families who needed somewhere safe to park their profits. The Gambino family, the Genovese organization, the Chicago outfit, all of them were using Vatican connections to clean their dirty money through Italian banks. The mechanics were brilliant in their simplicity. Crime families would donate large amounts to Catholic charities operating in the United States. These charities would then transfer the funds to Vatican accounts for missionary work in developing countries. From Vatican City, the money moved to offshore banks before returning to organized crime figures as legitimate investment returns. Every transaction appeared lawful on paper. Charitable donations were tax-deductible. Vatican transfers looked like religious activities. Offshore investments seemed like normal business operations, but the entire chain was designed to transform criminal proceeds into clean money that couldn't be traced by law enforcement. The beauty of this system, Marcinkus explained during one of their monthly meetings, is that it serves God's will while solving practical problems. American Catholics support church activities. Church activities generate revenue for Vatican operations. Vatican operations fund global evangelization. Everyone benefits. Everyone except the victims of organized crime violence. But that concern never appeared in the ledger books Calvi maintained so carefully. By 1964, Calvi had been promoted to Deputy Managing Director of Banco Ambrosiano. His salary increased fivefold. His office moved to the executive floor. His access to Vatican financial secrets expanded dramatically. He learned about Vatican investments in Italian defense contractors who sold weapons to both sides during regional conflicts, about church ownership of pharmaceutical companies that produced birth control pills despite official Vatican opposition to contraception, about papal real estate holdings in Las Vegas casino districts. Most shocking of all, he discovered that the Vatican had been quietly profiting from organized crime for decades. not just through money laundering, but through direct business partnerships. Vatican-controlled companies held silent partnerships in construction firms dominated by mob families. Church pension funds invested in labor unions controlled by organized crime. Even Vatican City's own construction projects used contractors with documented Mafia connections. The Church has always worked with powerful men, Marcinkus said when Calvi expressed concerns about these relationships. Kings, emperors, dictators, power is power regardless of its source. Our obligation is to advance God's kingdom on earth. If that requires doing business with imperfect partners, so be it. The money was intoxicating. Not just the profits Banco Ambrosiano earned from processing these transactions, but the sense of operating beyond normal rules. Calvi found himself handling financial secrets that could destroy governments, topple corporations, and expose criminal conspiracies across multiple continents. He also discovered something else. Vatican leaders were addicted to dirty money. Church officials who once worried about every expenditure now spent freely on personal luxuries. Marcinkus purchased a $200,000 apartment in Chicago for his retirement. Cardinal secretaries flew first class to international conferences. Vatican art acquisitions increased dramatically as church buyers competed for rare masterpieces. The transformation was subtle but unmistakable. Vatican City was becoming less like a religious institution and more like a criminal organization that happened to operate under church cover. But Calvi was also transforming. The nervous accountant who once counted every lira was becoming comfortable with financial deception. He learned to create shell companies within shell companies, to establish bank accounts using false identities, to move millions of dollars with transactions that left no permanent traces. Most importantly, he learned to rationalize activities that his Catholic conscience should have rejected completely. Every crime dollar laundered through Vatican accounts could fund legitimate church activities. Every favor done for organized crime families generated goodwill that might protect Vatican interests. Every ethical compromise was justified by the greater good of preserving the Catholic Church's global influence. By 1965, Roberto Calvi was no longer just processing other people's dirty money. He was creating his own criminal enterprises, and the Vatican was his willing partner. The holy money had made him rich. Soon it would make him powerful. Eventually, it would make him dead. But first, he needed to build a vault where God's secrets could be hidden safely from prying eyes. Chapter 2. Secret Vault. The vault lay buried 3 floors beneath Vatican City, accessible only through a private elevator that required 2 different keys operated simultaneously. In 1965, Roberto Calvi became one of only 7 people worldwide who possessed access to this underground chamber. What he found inside would haunt him for the rest of his life. The vault contained more than money. It housed the Vatican's deepest secrets, compromising photographs of government officials, financial records linking church leaders to war crimes, and detailed files on every major organized crime family in Europe and America. But most shocking were the cash reserves. Stacks of currency in every major denomination, stored in climate-controlled rooms that stretched beyond the reach of overhead lighting. Conservative estimates suggested the vault held between $800 million and $1.2 billion in untraceable bills. "This is our insurance policy," Archbishop Marcinkus explained as they walked through the underground corridors. "The Catholic Church has survived for 2,000 years because we understand that information and money are the ultimate forms of power." Calvi ran his fingers along bundles of $100 bills wrapped in plastic sheeting. "Where does all this money come from?" Calvi whispered. "Everywhere," Marcinkus replied. "Donations from wealthy Catholics who prefer anonymity. Investments that generate returns we can't officially acknowledge. Business partnerships that require discretion." The Archbishop opened another secured door, revealing filing cabinets that contained detailed records of every major financial crime committed in Western Europe since 1950. Murder contracts, extortion schemes, drug trafficking operations, all documented with the precision of papal genealogies. "Knowledge is leverage," Marcinkus continued. "These files ensure that certain individuals remain friendly to Vatican interests, They also provide insurance against anyone who might threaten church stability. Calvi realized he was looking at the largest blackmail archive in the world. The Vatican had been collecting compromising information about powerful figures for decades, using these secrets to protect church interests and generate revenue through subtle extortion. But the vault's most disturbing section contained something else entirely. Detailed financial records of Vatican involvement in organized crime dating back to the 1920s. Church leaders hadn't just tolerated criminal activity. They had actively participated in planning and financing it. In 1943, Vatican officials helped Nazi officers smuggle stolen gold through Swiss banks to fund post-war escape networks. During the 1950s, church-controlled companies laundered profits from French Connection heroin trafficking. Throughout the 1960s, Vatican accounts facilitated arms sales to both sides of various African civil wars. The Church's primary obligation is survival, Marcinkus said, noticing Calvi's shock at these revelations. Everything else, morality, legality, public opinion, is secondary to preserving the institution Christ established on earth. This philosophy explained how Vatican leaders justified their criminal partnerships. They weren't breaking God's law. They were ensuring that God's earthly representatives maintained sufficient power to advance divine will. Any activity that strengthened the Catholic Church was inherently moral, regardless of secular legal standards. Calvi spent hours in the vault that first day, studying financial records that revealed the true scope of Vatican criminal involvement. The numbers were staggering. Between 1960 and 1965, church-controlled accounts had processed over 400 million in organized crime profits. Money that funded everything from Vatican museums renovations to missionary work in South America. But the vault also contained something that would change Calvi's life forever: detailed plans for expanding Vatican criminal operations throughout the 1970s. Church leaders had identified money laundering as the perfect growth industry for Vatican finances. As international banking regulations tightened, criminal organizations would pay premium fees for access to accounts that enjoyed diplomatic immunity. Vatican City could become the Switzerland of organized crime, a neutral territory where any money could be cleaned for the right price. The plan called for establishing Vatican-controlled banks in 12 different countries by 1975. Each institution would operate independently while secretly coordinating with church authorities in Rome. Criminal proceeds could enter the system through any bank and emerge completely legitimized from any other bank. Calvi would serve as the primary architect of this expansion. His banking expertise, combined with his access to Vatican secrets, made him the ideal person to design and implement a global money laundering network. In exchange, he would receive 2% of all profits generated by the system. 2% might not sound like much, but when you're dealing with billions of dollars annually, 2% becomes serious wealth. Calvi could expect to earn between $50 million and $100 million personally from managing Vatican criminal finances. The offer was irresistible, not just because of the money, but because of the power it represented. As the Vatican's chief financial architect, Calvi would control information that could topple governments and destroy criminal empires. He would become one of the most influential men in Europe, operating in shadows but wielding enormous leverage over public figures. "Think of yourself as a modern-day apostle," Marcinkus said as they prepared to leave the vault. "Paul spread Christianity throughout the Roman Empire. You'll spread Vatican influence throughout the global financial system." Calvi accepted the position that same day. Within weeks, he was traveling across Europe, establishing shell companies and opening bank accounts in preparation for the Vatican's criminal expansion. His first stop was Switzerland, where numbered accounts allowed complete anonymity for large deposits. Swiss banking laws in the 1960s were perfectly designed for money laundering operations. Account holders could use false names without verification. Deposits faced no source requirements. Withdrawals left no permanent records, and Swiss authorities refused to cooperate with foreign investigations into banking activities. Calvi established 16 different Swiss accounts using identities provided by Vatican officials. Each account could receive transfers up to $10 million without triggering oversight procedures. Money could be deposited simultaneously into multiple accounts, then withdrawn and transferred to accounts in other countries within hours. From Switzerland, Calvi expanded into the Bahamas, where offshore banking regulations were even more permissive. Bahamian institutions required no identity verification for corporate accounts. Shell companies could be established and dissolved within days. Financial transactions conducted through Bahamian banks enjoyed complete protection from foreign government oversight. By the end of 1966, Calvi had established Vatican-controlled accounts in 8 different countries. The network could process over $100 million monthly in criminal proceeds while maintaining complete legitimacy on paper. Every transaction appeared to involve legitimate business activities between properly licensed financial institutions. The system's first major test came in early 1967 when the Gambino crime family needed to launder $50 million from a successful heroin operation. The money arrived in Switzerland as payment for consulting services provided by a Vatican-controlled company. Within 48 hours, the funds had been distributed among accounts in 4 different countries before returning to the United States as investment returns from offshore oil exploration. The entire transaction generated $2 million in fees for Vatican accounts. Clean money for the crime family, untraceable profit for the church, and personal commission for Calvi. Everyone was satisfied with the arrangement, but success bred ambition. As word spread through organized crime networks about Vatican banking services, demand exceeded Calvi's processing capacity. Criminal organizations across Europe and America wanted access to accounts that could clean their money while providing complete anonymity. Calvi realized he needed to expand operations beyond simple money laundering. Criminal organizations required more sophisticated services: currency exchanges, real estate purchases, corporate acquisitions, and investment management. They wanted to transform from cash-based operations into legitimate business empires. The Vatican could provide all these services. Church-controlled companies could purchase real estate on behalf of anonymous clients. Vatican investment funds could acquire corporate shares without revealing the true owners. Religious charities could make donations that appeared philanthropic, but actually transferred money to criminal organizations. By 1968, Calvi was managing what amounted to a parallel banking system designed specifically for criminal clients. The Vatican had become the world's largest money laundering operation, processing over $2 billion annually in illegal proceeds while maintaining complete legitimacy through religious cover. The secret vault beneath Vatican City had become the central nervous system of international organized crime. Financial records stored in its climate-controlled chambers documented every major criminal transaction in the Western world. Cash reserves provided immediate liquidity for operations that couldn't wait for normal banking procedures. Most importantly, the vault contained evidence of criminal activities involving dozens of government officials, corporate executives, and religious leaders. Information that ensured continued cooperation from individuals who might otherwise threaten Vatican interests. Roberto Calvi had created something unprecedented in criminal history: a money laundering system that was both completely illegal and completely untouchable. Protected by diplomatic immunity, blessed by church authority, and hidden beneath the world's most sacred ground. But building the perfect criminal enterprise required more than just financial infrastructure. It required partnerships with organizations capable of generating the massive illegal profits that would justify such elaborate laundering systems. Calvi was about to discover that the Vatican's criminal appetite extended far beyond money laundering. The Church wanted to become an active participant in the blood business that fed its secret accounts. Chapter 3. Blood Business. The phone call came at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in March 1968. Roberto Calvi answered on the first ring, knowing that middle-of-the-night calls meant only one thing: someone was dead, and Vatican money was involved. "We have a situation in Palermo," the voice said. Calvi recognized Archbishop Marcinkus immediately, despite the poor connection. "How quickly can you move $20 million through the Sicilian accounts?" $20 million. In 1968, that was enough money to buy a small country. Moving it through Sicilian banks meant dealing with the Cosa Nostra, the original Mafia families who controlled all financial activity on the island through violence and intimidation. What kind of situation? Calvi asked, already reaching for his encrypted account ledgers. The kind that requires immediate liquidation and complete discretion. Within hours, Calvi was on a private jet to Palermo, carrying diplomatic pouches filled with unmarked currency and authorization codes for Vatican accounts that didn't officially exist. What he discovered in Sicily would transform him from a money launderer into an accessory to mass murder. The situation was a war, not the kind of conflict that appears in newspapers, but the more deadly variety that rages beneath the surface of legitimate society. 3 Sicilian crime families were fighting for control of heroin trafficking routes between Turkey and New York. Bodies were dropping weekly, businesses were being bombed, government officials were being assassinated, and the Vatican was financing all sides of the conflict. Calvi met with Don Salvatore Toto Riina, the most feared mafia leader in Sicily, in a bombed-out church outside Corleone. The symbolism wasn't accidental. Church ruins provided the perfect setting for discussing how religious money funded criminal violence. Riina was a small man with dead eyes and hands that moved constantly, as if searching for weapons to grab. He spoke in whispers that somehow carried more menace than shouting. When he smiled, which was rarely, his expression looked like a death sentence. "Your Vatican friends understand business," Riina said, counting bundles of cash that Calvi had delivered. "They know that war costs money, and peace costs even more money." The economics were brutally simple. Sicilian crime families generated enormous profits from drug trafficking, but they needed capital to finance expansion into new markets. Traditional banks wouldn't lend money to obvious criminals. Legitimate investors avoided any business connected to organized crime. But the Vatican could provide both capital and legitimacy. Church-controlled companies could purchase real estate for money laundering operations. Vatican investment funds could finance construction projects that served as drug distribution centers. Religious charities could make donations that actually funded weapons purchases and assassination contracts. In exchange, Sicilian crime families provided services that the Vatican needed but couldn't request officially, intimidating church critics, eliminating troublesome investigative journalists, ensuring that Italian politicians remained friendly to Vatican interests. "We handle problems that prayer can't solve," Riina explained. "Your priests bless, we bury. Both are necessary for maintaining order." Calvi spent 3 days in Sicily, meeting with crime bosses who controlled different aspects of the drug trade. Each family received Vatican financing for specific operations: the Corleone family for Turkish heroin procurement, the Inzerillo family for Mediterranean shipping routes, the Badalamenti family for New York distribution networks. The amounts were staggering. Individual families received between $5 million and $15 million annually from Vatican accounts. Money that funded private armies, corrupted entire police departments, and purchased enough weapons to fight small wars. But Vatican financing came with conditions. Crime families had to invest a percentage of their profits in legitimate businesses controlled by church-connected companies. They had to use Vatican banks for all major financial transactions. Most importantly, they had to provide security services for church operations throughout Europe and America. These security services included activities that made Calvi's blood run cold: assassinating union leaders who opposed Vatican business interests, bombing newspapers that investigated church finances, kidnapping prosecutors who got too close to sensitive information. The Vatican wasn't just laundering money for organized crime, it was actively commissioning criminal activities that served church political objectives. Every murder contract funded through Vatican accounts advanced the Catholic Church's global influence, while generating profits that funded legitimate church operations. "Think of it as Christian warfare," Marcinkus explained during a private dinner in Rome. "The early church used Roman soldiers to spread Christianity. We use modern soldiers to preserve Christian influence. The methods change, but the mission remains the same." Calvi realized he was witnessing the birth of something unprecedented, a religious organization that had fully embraced criminal methodology while maintaining moral authority through sacred imagery. The Vatican had become the world's largest crime family, blessed by God and protected by diplomatic immunity. But Vatican criminal activities extended far beyond money laundering and assassination contracts. Church leaders had identified drug trafficking as the most profitable growth industry of the 1960s, and they wanted direct participation in the business. Through shell companies registered in Panama and the Bahamas, the Vatican became a silent partner in several major heroin importation operations. Church-controlled ships transported drugs from Turkey to Sicily. Vatican investment funds financed processing laboratories hidden in Italian monasteries. Religious charities provided cover for distribution networks operating throughout Europe and America. The profits were extraordinary. Drug trafficking generated returns of 500% to 1,000% on initial investments. Money invested in heroin operations could double or triple within months, providing the Vatican with cash flows that dwarfed traditional church revenue sources. By 1969, Vatican involvement in international drug trafficking was generating over $100 million annually in direct profits, money that funded everything from papal travel expenses to missionary schools in Africa. The Catholic Church had become one of the world's largest drug trafficking organizations, while maintaining its reputation as humanity's moral guardian. Calvi's role in these operations expanded rapidly. He established processing accounts for drug profits in 12 different countries, created shell companies that purchased chemicals needed for heroin production, managed currency exchanges that converted drug proceeds into untraceable assets like gold and precious stones. Most disturbingly, he began coordinating with organized crime figures to eliminate individuals who threatened Vatican criminal operations. Prosecutors investigating church finances, journalists writing stories about Vatican Mafia connections, government officials refusing to cooperate with church-sponsored criminal activities. The elimination process was remarkably efficient. Calvi would identify threatening individuals through Vatican intelligence networks. Sicilian crime families would receive funding to neutralize these threats. Within weeks or months, problems would disappear through car accidents, heart attacks, or mysterious disappearances. Between 1968 and 1970, over 40 people who posed potential threats to Vatican criminal operations died under suspicious circumstances. Each death appeared accidental or natural, but the pattern was unmistakable to anyone who understood how the system operated. Calvi kept detailed records of these elimination contracts in encrypted files stored within the Vatican's underground vault. Each file contained photographs of the target, documentation of the threat they posed, and financial records showing payments made to eliminate them. The files revealed the systematic nature of Vatican violence. Church leaders maintained assassination teams across Europe and America, ready to eliminate threats on short notice. These teams operated with the same precision and coordination as Vatican missionary efforts, but their mission was death rather than salvation. Every great institution requires defenders, Marcinkus said when Calvi expressed concerns about the mounting body count. The Catholic Church has survived for 2 millennia because we understand that some enemies can only be stopped through force. We're not murderers, we're protectors of divine will. This rationalization allowed Vatican officials to authorize criminal activities that would have horrified earlier church leaders. Murder became missionary work, drug trafficking became charity, money laundering became stewardship of divine resources, but the blood business generated more than just profits and political protection. It created addictive relationships that were impossible to escape. Crime families who received Vatican financing became dependent on church money for their operations. Vatican officials who authorized criminal activities became vulnerable to blackmail from their criminal partners. By 1970, the Catholic Church and Italian organized crime had become so intertwined that separation was impossible. Vatican accounts processed over $500 million annually in drug profits. Church-controlled companies provided logistical support for major criminal operations. Religious institutions served as safe houses for fugitive crime figures. Most dangerously, Vatican criminal activities had created powerful enemies who viewed the Church as a legitimate target for retaliation. Government agencies investigating organized crime were beginning to discover evidence of Vatican involvement. foreign intelligence services were monitoring church financial activities. Reform-minded Catholics were questioning the source of the Vatican's mysteriously abundant resources. Roberto Calvi had helped create a criminal empire that generated enormous wealth and political influence for the Catholic Church. But he had also built a conspiracy so vast and so violent that it could only be maintained through escalating levels of corruption and murder. The Vatican had become addicted to blood money, and addictions always demand higher doses to maintain their effects. Soon, church leaders would discover that their appetite for criminal profits had attracted attention from the most dangerous investigators in the world. And Roberto Calvi would find himself at the center of a conspiracy that reached from Vatican City to the highest levels of international government. The blood business was about to become a bloodbath. Chapter 4. Vatican Conspiracy. The letter arrived on Vatican stationery, sealed with papal wax, and delivered by Swiss Guard courier directly to Calvi's Milan office. But the message inside wasn't from any pope. Phase 2 begins immediately. Expand American operations. Prepare for full integration. The future belongs to those who control both sacred and secular power. PM. Paul Marcinkus had just authorized the Vatican's transformation from European money launderer into global criminal empire. What Calvi read next in the encrypted instructions would make him an architect of the largest conspiracy in modern religious history. The plan was breathtakingly ambitious. By 1975, Vatican-controlled financial networks would dominate organized crime operations across 3 continents. Church money would finance drug trafficking from Southeast Asia to American cities. Vatican companies would control construction projects, labor unions, and political campaigns throughout the Western world. But the ultimate goal went far beyond criminal profits. Marcinkus envisioned a shadow government where Vatican officials wielded more practical power than elected leaders, where church interests shaped foreign policy decisions, where Catholic influence determined economic policies that affected billions of people. "We're not just building a financial empire," Marcinkus explained during a secret meeting in a Swiss monastery. "We're creating a parallel civilization where Christian values, properly interpreted, guide human affairs." The monastery had been chosen carefully for this gathering. Located high in the Alps, accessible only by private helicopter, it provided complete security for discussions that could never be officially acknowledged. Attending were 12 men who controlled the Vatican's most sensitive operations: Calvi, Marcinkus, 3 cardinal secretaries, 4 Italian intelligence officials, and 2 American crime bosses whose cooperation was essential for transatlantic expansion. What emerged from this meeting was nothing less than a blueprint for global conspiracy. The Vatican would use its unique status as both religious institution and sovereign nation to create criminal networks that operated beyond the reach of any government. Church diplomatic immunity would protect criminal operations. Religious cover would legitimize illegal activities. Sacred authority would silence critics and investigators. The American expansion required particularly sophisticated planning. Unlike Europe, where Catholic influence was deeply embedded in political structures, the United States maintained strict separation between church and state. Vatican operations would need to be more subtle, more carefully concealed, and more ruthlessly enforced. American crime families would serve as primary partners, but Vatican control would be absolute. Church money would finance expansion into new criminal markets: Las Vegas gambling, Miami drug trafficking, and New York labor racketeering. In exchange, Catholic political interests would receive protection and advancement through organized crime influence. Think of it as evangelization through economics, Cardinal Secretary Luigi Poggi explained. "We spread Catholic values by controlling the financial systems that determine human behavior. People may reject our theology, but they can't reject our money." The conspiracy required establishing Vatican banks in major American cities, not obvious church institutions, but seemingly independent financial companies controlled through shell corporations and nominee directors. Each bank would serve legitimate customers while secretly processing criminal proceeds for organized crime partners. Calvi was tasked with designing the financial architecture for this expansion. Within 6 months, he established Vatican-controlled banks in New York, Chicago, Miami, and Los Angeles. Each institution employed respected banking professionals who had no idea their operations were funded by drug trafficking and murder contracts. The New York operation became the conspiracy's crown jewel. Located in Manhattan's financial district, staffed by Ivy League graduates and regulated by federal banking authorities, it appeared completely legitimate. But behind the marble facades and mahogany boardrooms, Vatican money was financing the largest heroin distribution network in American history. The bank processed over $50 million monthly in drug proceeds disguised as international trade financing. Money from Sicilian heroin sales appeared as payments for Italian luxury goods. Cash from New York street dealers was converted into wire transfers for art acquisitions and charitable donations. But the Vatican's American conspiracy extended far beyond drug trafficking. Church money began flowing into political campaigns, purchasing influence that shaped legislation affecting Catholic interests. Senators received campaign contributions from companies secretly controlled by Vatican accounts. Congressmen accepted speaking fees from organizations funded by organized crime profits. The political influence operated through multiple layers of concealment. Vatican money would flow to Italian-American civic organizations, which would donate to Catholic political action committees, which would contribute to campaigns of supportive candidates. Each transfer appeared legitimate while serving the overall conspiracy. By 1972, Vatican financial influence was affecting major American policy decisions. Immigration laws favored Catholic refugees from communist countries. Foreign aid programs supported Vatican political interests in Latin America. Banking regulations included exemptions that protected church financial operations. "We're not buying politicians," Marcinkus insisted during one of their quarterly planning meetings. "We're investing in leaders who understand that America's Christian heritage should guide its governance. The money simply ensures that godly men have resources to advance divine will." But the conspiracy's most dangerous element was its intelligence-gathering operation. Using confession booth information, Vatican officials compiled detailed files on political leaders' personal secrets. Adultery, homosexuality, financial corruption, family scandals, all became leverage for advancing church interests. These intelligence files were stored in the underground Vatican vault alongside criminal financial records. Government officials across Europe and America found themselves cooperating with Vatican requests not from religious conviction, but from fear of personal exposure. The system created a web of mutual blackmail that made opposition to Vatican interests nearly impossible. Crime figures possessed evidence of church criminal activities. Church officials held documentation of political corruption. Politicians protected criminal operations to conceal their own scandals. Calvi realized he was managing more than financial accounts. He was coordinating a conspiracy that could topple governments, destroy political careers, and reshape international relations according to Vatican preferences. The conspiracy's reach became apparent in 1973, when Chilean President Salvador Allende was overthrown in a military coup. While news reports focused on CIA involvement, Calvi knew the true story. Vatican money had financed the coup through Chilean crime families who opposed Allende's socialist policies. Church funding had purchased weapons for the military rebels, bribed key officials to support the uprising, and provided cash payments to ensure Allende's assassination during the coup. The operation generated massive returns when the new military government awarded Vatican-controlled companies exclusive contracts for Chilean copper mining and agricultural development. Chile was a test case, Marcinkus explained. "We proved that Vatican influence can determine the fate of nations when properly applied. Now we'll implement similar operations wherever church interests are threatened."
Similar operations were already underway across Latin America. Vatican money was financing right-wing death squads in El Salvador, drug trafficking operations in Colombia, and military dictatorships in Argentina and Brazil. Each operation advanced Catholic political influence while generating criminal profits that funded further expansion. But the conspiracy created dangerous vulnerabilities. As Vatican criminal activities expanded, evidence accumulated in ways that became increasingly difficult to control. Financial records, communication intercepts, and witness testimonies were building a case that could expose the entire network. American law enforcement agencies were beginning to notice unusual patterns in organized crime financing. FBI surveillance detected mysterious money flows that didn't match known criminal revenue streams. DEA investigations discovered drug trafficking operations with sophisticated financial backing that seemed beyond the capabilities of traditional crime families. Most dangerously, several Vatican insiders were beginning to question the moral implications of church criminal activities. Reform-minded priests, disturbed by rumors of Vatican corruption, started conducting private investigations. Some discovered evidence that shocked them into considering public exposure. "We have traitors within our own ranks," Cardinal Poggi warned during a 1974 planning meeting. Catholics who believe their loyalty to abstract morality supersedes their obedience to church authority. These individuals pose existential threats to our operations. The solution was characteristically ruthless. Vatican intelligence networks identified potentially troublesome church officials and subjected them to intensive surveillance. Their communications were monitored, their financial activities investigated, their personal relationships scrutinized for compromising information. Those who couldn't be controlled through blackmail or intimidation faced more permanent solutions. Between 1973 and 1975, 6 Vatican officials died under suspicious circumstances after expressing concerns about church criminal activities. Each death appeared accidental or natural, but the pattern was clear to anyone familiar with Vatican elimination protocols. Roberto Calvi found himself increasingly isolated within this conspiracy. As the financial architect of Vatican criminal operations, he possessed evidence that could destroy the careers and lives of hundreds of powerful individuals. But that same evidence made him a target for elimination if he ever threatened to expose the network. He began taking precautions that acknowledged the deadly nature of his situation, copying sensitive documents and storing them in Swiss safe deposit boxes, establishing emergency communication channels with investigative journalists, creating contingency plans for rapid escape if his position became untenable. But Calvi also discovered something that made escape impossible. He was addicted to the power and wealth that Vatican criminal activities provided. Managing billions of dollars in illegal proceeds had made him one of the most influential men in international finance. Walking away would mean abandoning everything that had given his life meaning and purpose. The Vatican conspiracy had created perfect prisoners, criminal partners who couldn't leave without facing prosecution, church officials who couldn't reform without admitting complicity in mass murder, politicians who couldn't oppose without exposing their own corruption. By 1975, the conspiracy encompassed thousands of individuals across dozens of countries, united by shared guilt and mutual vulnerability. It had become a living organism that fed on criminal profits and grew through expanding corruption. But living organisms can also become diseased, and the Vatican conspiracy was developing a cancer that would eventually destroy it from within. That cancer was greed, and its most aggressive form was about to metastasize through Roberto Calvi's money laundering operations. Chapter 5: Money Laundering. The machine never stopped. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, Roberto Calvi's financial network processed dirty money with the efficiency of a Swiss watch and the moral flexibility of a hired killer. By 1975, Vatican accounts were laundering over $3 billion annually through banks in 18 different countries. Money flowed like a digital river. Drug proceeds from New York became investment capital in Switzerland. Mafia profits from Sicily transformed into charitable donations in Panama. Arms dealing revenues from Lebanon emerged as real estate purchases in the Bahamas. But the scale of these operations had created an unexpected problem. There was too much dirty money to launder effectively. "We're drowning in cash," Calvi confessed to Archbishop Marcinkus during their monthly review meeting. "American crime families are generating profits faster than we can process them. Our current capacity handles maybe 60% of available business." The numbers were staggering. New York's 5 families were producing over $200 million monthly in drug trafficking profits alone. Chicago organized crime operations generated another $150 million from gambling and labor racketeering. Miami cocaine importers needed to launder $300 million quarterly through offshore accounts. Meanwhile, Vatican criminal enterprises were expanding globally. Church-controlled companies were importing heroin from Southeast Asian suppliers, distributing cocaine throughout European markets, and manufacturing synthetic drugs in laboratories hidden within Italian monasteries. "Then we need bigger machines," Marcinkus replied, "and more sophisticated engineering." What Calvi built next would become the most complex money laundering system in criminal history. A financial network so intricate that government investigators couldn't understand its structure, so vast that no single institution could monitor its activities, and so profitable that it generated enough clean money to fund small nations. The system's foundation was a web of shell companies registered in countries with minimal disclosure requirements. Panama, the Cayman Islands, Liechtenstein, and Luxembourg became Vatican financial territories where money could be moved without leaving permanent traces. Each shell company served specific functions in the laundering process. Import-export firms provided cover for drug trafficking proceeds. Construction companies justified large cash payments from organized crime clients. Investment funds allowed criminal profits to be mixed with legitimate capital. But the system's genius lay in its religious camouflage. Every shell company maintained connections to Catholic charitable organizations. Drug money entered the system as donations to missionary work. Organized crime profits appeared as contributions to religious education programs. Arms-dealing revenues looked like funding for church construction projects. The beauty of religious cover, Calvi explained to his core financial team, is that nobody wants to investigate activities that appear charitable. Auditors avoid questioning church transactions. Prosecutors hesitate to examine religious organizations. Politicians refuse to challenge institutions their constituents support. The laundering process involved multiple stages designed to obscure money trails beyond recognition. Criminal proceeds would first be deposited into Vatican accounts as charitable contributions. These funds would then be transferred to shell companies registered in different countries for missionary work or educational programs. From there, money would be converted into various assets: Swiss bank certificates, Cayman Islands real estate, Panamanian corporate shares, or Luxembourg investment bonds. Each conversion created new documentation that made the funds appear completely legitimate. Finally, cleaned money would be returned to criminal organizations through seemingly normal business transactions. Vatican-controlled companies would purchase services from crime family businesses. Church investment funds would acquire properties owned by organized crime figures. Religious charities would make grants to organizations secretly controlled by criminal partners. The entire cycle took between 6 and 18 months, depending on the amounts involved and the level of scrutiny required. By the time money completed its journey through the Vatican system, it was impossible to trace back to its criminal origins. But managing this system required extraordinary attention to detail. Calvi maintained separate accounting systems for each stage of the laundering process. Computer records were encrypted using codes that only he possessed. Financial documents were stored in safe deposit boxes across multiple countries. Most importantly, he created redundant backup systems that could continue operating even if primary networks were discovered or compromised. If authorities shut down Vatican operations in Switzerland, money could still flow through accounts in Panama and the Bahamas. If Italian banks faced government scrutiny, transactions could be processed through subsidiaries in Luxembourg and Liechtenstein. The system's most sophisticated feature was its ability to automatically adjust laundering routes based on law enforcement activities. When American authorities increased surveillance of certain banks, Vatican operations would shift to institutions in other countries. When European investigators focused on specific transaction patterns, the system would modify its procedures to avoid detection. "We've created artificial intelligence for criminal finance," Calvi told Marcinkus with obvious pride. "The system learns from government investigations and adapts faster than authorities can respond." By 1976, Vatican money laundering operations were processing over $5 billion annually, while maintaining the appearance of complete legitimacy. Church financial statements showed growing revenues from donations and investments, with no indication that most income derived from drug trafficking and organized crime activities. But success bred its own dangers. As Vatican financial operations expanded, they attracted attention from intelligence agencies that specialized in tracking international money flows. The CIA, DEA, and FBI were beginning to notice unusual patterns that suggested sophisticated criminal coordination. More dangerously, the system's complexity made it vulnerable to insider manipulation. Calvi discovered that several Vatican officials were diverting criminal proceeds for personal use, creating unauthorized accounts that could expose the entire network if investigated. Cardinal Secretary Giovanni Benelli had established private Swiss accounts containing over $50 million in diverted drug profits. Monsignor Paul Marcinkus maintained real estate investments worth $30 million, purchased with funds stolen from criminal operations. Even Pope Paul VI's personal secretary had created a Panamanian shell company to hide $15 million in misappropriated money. Everyone's stealing from everyone, Calvi complained to his most trusted financial advisor, Michele Sindona. The Vatican is laundering money for organized crime, but Vatican officials are stealing that money for themselves. We're criminals robbing other criminals. Sindona, himself a prominent Italian banker with extensive Mafia connections, saw opportunity in this chaos. Then we control the stealing, he replied. Instead of trying to prevent insider theft, we organize it, create official channels for personal enrichment that generate additional profits for our operations. What emerged was a system within the system, authorized corruption that allowed Vatican officials to skim criminal proceeds in exchange for protecting the overall money laundering network. Each participant could steal predetermined amounts without threatening the operation's security. This controlled corruption served multiple purposes. It ensured Vatican cooperation by giving church leaders personal stakes in criminal profits. It provided leverage over officials who might consider exposing the network, and it generated additional revenue through taxation of unauthorized activities. But it also created new vulnerabilities. Vatican officials who were stealing criminal proceeds became targets for blackmail by organized crime partners. Church leaders who were living beyond their means attracted government scrutiny. The system's security depended increasingly on maintaining silence among hundreds of compromised participants. Roberto Calvi found himself managing more than financial transactions. He was coordinating a conspiracy of mutual corruption that encompassed religious leaders, organized crime figures, and government officials across multiple continents. The pressure was enormous. Every day brought new demands from criminal clients who needed money laundered immediately. Vatican officials who wanted their personal accounts expanded. Government authorities who were asking uncomfortable questions about unusual financial activities. Calvi began experiencing health problems that reflected the stress of his position. Chronic insomnia from constantly monitoring global financial markets. Severe headaches from maintaining hundreds of encrypted communication channels. Heart palpitations during meetings with crime bosses who expressed displeasure through violence rather than conversation. "This system will kill me," he confided to his wife during a rare evening at home, "but stopping it will definitely kill me." By 1977, Vatican money laundering operations had become so vast and complex that they were generating their own gravitational pull within international finance. Legitimate banks were unknowingly processing Vatican transactions. Government agencies were inadvertently protecting criminal operations. Even reform-minded church officials were unwittingly supporting activities they would have condemned if they understood their true nature. The machine had achieved perfect camouflage, a criminal enterprise that looked exactly like the world's most respected religious institution. But perfect camouflage also created perfect vulnerability, because when the disguise finally slipped, the fall would be catastrophic for everyone involved. And Roberto Calvi was beginning to suspect that someone very powerful was preparing to remove his disguise permanently. Chapter 6. Murder. Mystery. Michel Sindona died 3 times before they finally killed him. The first death was financial. In 1974, his Franklin National Bank collapsed amid accusations of Vatican money laundering, wiping out $2 billion in assets and exposing connections to organized crime that investigators had been tracking for years. The second death was social. Facing fraud charges in multiple countries, Sindona became a pariah among the financial elite who had once courted his favor. Former partners denied knowing him. Political allies refused his calls. Even Vatican officials distanced themselves from their former financial advisor. The third death was literal. On March 20th, 1986, Michel Sindona died of cyanide poisoning in his Italian prison cell, 2 days before he was scheduled to testify about Vatican Mafia connections that could have destroyed dozens of careers and exposed the largest criminal conspiracy in modern history. But Roberto Calvi knew that Sindona's death was just the beginning. A systematic elimination campaign was underway, designed to silence everyone who possessed detailed knowledge of Vatican criminal operations. The pattern had become obvious to anyone paying attention. Between 1978 and 1982, over 20 individuals connected to Vatican finances died under suspicious circumstances. Heart attacks affected remarkably healthy men. Car accidents occurred under impossible conditions. Suicides happened to people with no history of depression and every reason to live. Each death appeared unrelated to the others, but Calvi possessed the encrypted financial records that revealed the true connections. Every victim had threatened to expose Vatican criminal activities. Every elimination had been funded through accounts he personally managed. Every murder had been commissioned by the same group of church officials who claimed to represent God's will on earth. "We're cleaning house," Archbishop Marcinkus explained during what would be their final meeting in 1981. "Too many people know too much about sensitive activities. The Vatican's survival requires reducing our liability exposure." Liability exposure. Marcinkus was discussing mass murder using the language of corporate risk management. The elimination list included prosecutors investigating Vatican finances, journalists writing stories about church corruption, and government officials refusing to cooperate with Vatican criminal operations. But it also included church insiders who had become security risks through personal indiscretions or moral qualms. Cardinal Giuseppe Caprio, who had expressed concerns about Vatican drug trafficking, died of a sudden heart attack while meeting with investigators from the Italian finance police. Monsignor Emilio Colagiovanni, who possessed detailed records of Vatican money laundering operations, was killed in a car accident that destroyed his vehicle so completely that forensic analysis was impossible. Most disturbing was the death of Pope John Paul I, who had served only 33 days before dying under circumstances that Vatican officials refused to investigate thoroughly. Calvi knew why the Pope had died so quickly. He had discovered evidence of Vatican criminal activities and planned to initiate comprehensive reforms that would have destroyed the entire network. "Albino Luciani was a good man," Marcinkus said when Calvi asked about the Pope's death. "But good men sometimes make bad decisions for the Church's long-term welfare. We corrected that situation before irreversible damage occurred." Calvi realized that Vatican officials had murdered a sitting pope to protect their criminal operations. If they were willing to assassinate Christ's earthly representative, no one was safe from elimination if they threatened the conspiracy. But the most systematic eliminations targeted individuals outside the Vatican who possessed evidence of church criminal activities. Italian magistrates investigating organized crime discovered that their cases involving Vatican finances invariably ended with key witnesses dying or disappearing. Judge Emilio Alessandrini, who was preparing indictments against Vatican money laundering operations, was shot to death outside his Milan courthouse. Prosecutor Giorgio Ambrosoli, who had uncovered connections between Vatican banks and Sicilian drug trafficking, was assassinated in the street after receiving death threats traced to church-controlled accounts. The killings weren't random violence. They followed carefully planned operations designed to eliminate specific threats while maintaining plausible deniability for Vatican involvement. Each assassination was commissioned through shell companies, funded by untraceable accounts and executed by professional killers with no apparent connections to church activities. Calvi maintained detailed records of these elimination contracts in encrypted files stored within Swiss safe deposit boxes. The files revealed a systematic murder campaign that had cost over $30 million and eliminated 43 individuals who posed threats to Vatican criminal operations. But the elimination campaign created new problems, even as it solved old ones. Each murder attracted government attention that increased scrutiny of Vatican activities. Investigators who had been focusing on organized crime began examining connections to church finances. Intelligence agencies started monitoring Vatican communications and financial transactions. More dangerously, the campaign required expanding the circle of individuals who knew about Vatican assassination operations. Crime family hitmen demanded higher payments for eliminating high-profile targets. Government officials required larger bribes to ignore obvious patterns of murder. Swiss bankers needed additional incentives to process payments for elimination contracts. "We're creating more problems than we're solving," Calvi warned Marcinkus during their 1981 meeting. "Every murder requires dozens of accomplices. Every accomplice becomes a potential security risk. We're building a conspiracy of witnesses who could destroy us if they ever decide to cooperate with authorities." Marcinkus dismissed these concerns with characteristic arrogance. "Fear ensures loyalty more effectively than money," he replied. "People who know about our elimination capabilities understand the consequences of betrayal." But Calvi had discovered something that terrified him. His own name had appeared on Vatican elimination lists. Church officials had begun viewing him as an unacceptable security risk due to his detailed knowledge of criminal operations and his increasingly erratic behavior under pressure. The evidence was subtle but unmistakable. Vatican accounts had transferred $2 million to a Sicilian shell company known to specialize in high-profile assassinations. Swiss banks had received instructions to close Calvi's personal accounts and transfer funds to Vatican control. Insurance companies had been contacted about policies on Calvi's life, with Vatican officials listed as beneficiaries. Roberto Calvi had built the perfect money laundering machine for Vatican criminal operations. Now that machine was being turned against him. He began taking desperate precautions to protect himself from assassination, varying his daily routines to avoid predictable patterns, hiring bodyguards with no connections to Italian organized crime, establishing emergency communication channels with investigative journalists who could publish evidence of Vatican criminal activities if he disappeared. Most importantly, he prepared a comprehensive insurance policy, detailed documentation of every Vatican criminal operation he had managed, stored in Swiss safe deposit boxes with instructions for automatic release if he died under suspicious circumstances. The insurance policy contained financial records proving Vatican involvement in drug trafficking, money laundering, and assassination contracts. Swiss bank statements showing criminal proceeds flowing through church accounts. Encrypted communications revealing coordination between Vatican officials and organized crime leaders. But Calvi's insurance policy also contained something that made it incredibly dangerous to possess. Evidence that Vatican criminal operations extended far beyond Italy and the United States. Church officials were financing terrorist organizations in the Middle East, drug trafficking networks in South America, and arms dealing operations in Africa. The scope of Vatican criminal activities was so vast that exposing them could destabilize governments, collapse financial institutions, and destroy the credibility of the Catholic Church as a moral authority. Dozens of world leaders were compromised by their cooperation with Vatican criminal operations. "If this information becomes public," Calvi told his wife during their final conversation, "it will trigger the largest political scandal in human history. Governments will fall. The church might not survive. Thousands of people will be prosecuted or killed." But keeping the information secret required staying alive long enough to negotiate some kind of protection arrangement. Calvi needed to find individuals powerful enough to shield him from Vatican assassination attempts while maintaining his silence about criminal operations that could destroy them all. In June 1982, Roberto Calvi flew to London carrying Swiss safe deposit box keys and contact information for investigative journalists who had agreed to publish his evidence if necessary. He believed he could negotiate a settlement that would allow him to retire quietly in exchange for permanent silence about Vatican criminal activities. What he didn't understand was that Vatican officials had already decided that silence could only be guaranteed through death. The conspiracy had grown too large and too dangerous to risk exposure through any surviving witness, regardless of their promises or protections. On June 18, 1982, Roberto Calvi's body was found hanging from scaffolding beneath London's Blackfriars Bridge. His pockets contained bricks and thousands of dollars in cash. British authorities initially ruled his death a suicide, despite obvious evidence of murder. But the real mystery wasn't how Calvi died. It was who would die next in the Vatican's systematic campaign to eliminate every witness to the largest criminal conspiracy in religious history. The murder machine that Calvi had helped finance was now operating beyond anyone's control, consuming its own creators in a desperate attempt to preserve secrets that could destroy the Catholic Church forever. And the next target on the elimination list was the man who had ordered Calvi's death, Archbishop Paul Marcinkus himself.
Chapter 7. Financial Collapse. The call came at dawn on June 19, 1982, 12 hours after Roberto Calvi's body was discovered hanging beneath Blackfriars Bridge. Archbishop Paul Marcinkus answered his private Vatican telephone to hear 5 words that would destroy everything he had built. The Swiss accounts are empty over 1.3 billion, and Vatican criminal proceeds had vanished overnight from numbered accounts that were supposed to be impenetrable. Money that represented 15 years of drug trafficking profits, organized crime partnerships, and assassination contracts had simply disappeared from Swiss banks. That's impossible, Marcinkus whispered into the encrypted phone. Calvi was the only person with access to those accounts, and Calvi is dead. Calvi was smart enough to create deadman switches, the Swiss banker replied. Account instructions triggered automatically upon confirmation of his death. Every dollar has been transferred to accounts we can't trace or freeze. The financial catastrophe was worse than anyone initially understood. Calvi hadn't just emptied Vatican criminal accounts. He had systematically looted funds belonging to organized crime families who used Vatican banks for money laundering, Sicilian Mafia profits, American crime family assets, and South American drug trafficking proceeds had all vanished into Calvi's insurance policy against assassination. Within hours, Vatican phones were ringing with death threats from crime bosses who wanted their money returned immediately. The Gambino family had lost $200 million in drug trafficking proceeds. Chicago organized crime operations couldn't access $150 million in labor racketeering profits. Colombian cocaine importers faced bankruptcy because $300 million in payments had disappeared. You Vatican bastards stole our money. Salvatore Totorina screamed during a conference call with Marcinkus. We trusted you with our business, and you robbed us like common thieves. Someone's going to pay for this betrayal. The threats weren't idle posturing. Organized crime families who had lost their life savings through Vatican financial collapse began planning retaliation against church targets. Within weeks, Vatican officials required constant bodyguard protection as hitmen stalked church properties across Europe and America. But the stolen money was just the beginning of the Vatican's financial problems. Calvi's death had triggered a comprehensive investigation of Banco Ambrosiano that revealed the true scope of Vatican criminal operations. Italian authorities discovered that the bank had been insolvent for years, surviving only through money laundering fees and criminal partnerships. Banco Ambrosiano owed $1.3 billion to legitimate creditors who had unknowingly funded criminal operations through normal business loans. When the bank's true financial condition became public, international confidence in Vatican finances collapsed completely. Bond rating agencies downgraded Vatican credit ratings to junk status. International banks demanded immediate repayment of loans to church institutions. Currency markets began betting against the Vatican lira, triggering devaluation that destroyed the church's purchasing power for foreign operations. We're facing financial Armageddon. Cardinal Secretary Agostino Casaroli warned Pope John Paul II during an emergency meeting. The church's liquid assets have been stolen or frozen. Our credit rating has collapsed. We can't fund normal operations, much less deal with criminal retaliation. The Pope, who had been largely insulated from Vatican criminal activities, finally understood the full scope of the conspiracy that had been operating in his name. Church officials had been financing drug trafficking, commissioning murders, and laundering money for organized crime while claiming to represent God's moral authority on earth. John Paul II's response was characteristically decisive. He ordered immediate termination of all Vatican criminal operations, regardless of financial consequences. Church officials were instructed to cease communication with organized crime partners. Vatican accounts were closed in countries that didn't provide adequate regulatory oversight, but ending Vatican criminal operations was easier ordered than accomplished. The Church had become so dependent on dirty money that legitimate revenue couldn't support basic operations. Without criminal proceeds, the Vatican couldn't fund missionary work, maintain diplomatic missions, or operate schools and hospitals worldwide. More dangerously, organized crime families weren't willing to accept the end of their financial relationships with the Vatican. They had invested billions of dollars in church-controlled operations and expected continued access to money laundering services regardless of papal preferences. You can't just walk away from this business. Chicago crime boss Anthony Big Tuna Accardo told Marcinkus during a threatening phone call, "We have contracts with the Vatican. We have evidence of church criminal activities. We have ways of making sure those contracts are honored." The evidence was indeed damaging. During 15 years of partnership, organized crime families had accumulated detailed records of Vatican criminal operations, financial documents, recorded conversations, and photographic evidence that could destroy the Catholic Church's moral credibility if made public. Crime families began using this evidence to extort continued cooperation from Vatican officials. Church leaders faced an impossible choice: resume criminal partnerships or watch their reputations destroyed through exposure of past activities. Some Vatican officials chose to flee rather than face either alternative. Between 1982 and 1984, over 20 church administrators disappeared from their positions without explanation. Most surfaced months later in South American countries with new identities and Swiss bank accounts containing mysteriously substantial assets. Archbishop Paul Marcinkus himself became a fugitive within Vatican City. As an American citizen, he could be extradited to face criminal charges in the United States if he left papal territory. And Italian authorities had issued arrest warrants for money laundering and conspiracy charges that carried life imprisonment sentences. "I'm trapped in the smallest country on earth," Marcinkus complained to his remaining allies. "I can't leave Vatican City without facing arrest. But staying here means living like a prisoner in the place I once controlled." The financial collapse had transformed Vatican City from criminal headquarters into a gilded cage for compromised church officials. Marcinkus, once one of the most powerful men in international finance, was reduced to hiding behind diplomatic immunity while watching his empire crumble. But the collapse created opportunities for individuals smart enough to exploit the chaos. Secret Vatican accounts still contained billions of dollars in assets that couldn't be claimed by legitimate authorities or criminal partners. Money that belonged to dead crime bosses, dissolved shell companies, and abandoned operations. Financial scavengers began competing to access these orphaned assets through forged documents, bribery, and violence. Swiss banks found themselves mediating disputes between Vatican officials, organized crime families, and intelligence agencies, who all claimed legitimate rights to the same money. The competition turned deadly when different groups began eliminating rivals to reduce claims on contested assets. Between 1983 and 1985, over 30 individuals connected to Vatican financial operations died under suspicious circumstances as various factions fought for control of Calvi's hidden treasure. It's like a biblical plague. Cardinal Secretary Giuseppe Caprio observed, "God is punishing everyone who participated in this unholy alliance. The wicked are consuming each other in their greed." But the financial collapse also revealed something unexpected. The Catholic Church was remarkably resilient when forced to operate legitimately. Without criminal proceeds to mask their true financial condition, church leaders were compelled to implement genuine reforms that improved long-term stability. Vatican finances were restructured under international banking supervision. Church investments were limited to legitimate enterprises with verified revenue sources. Papal accounts were subjected to regular auditing by independent firms that reported directly to the Pope. Most importantly, Vatican City established transparent financial reporting procedures that allowed public scrutiny of church revenues and expenditures. The secretive banking practices that had enabled criminal partnerships were replaced with accountability measures that prevented future corruption. Perhaps this crisis was God's way of purifying his church. Pope John Paul II reflected during a private conversation with Cardinal Casaroli. "We lost our way when we chose mammon over morality. Now we have an opportunity to rebuild on a foundation of genuine Christian values." The rebuilding process was slow and painful. Vatican revenues dropped by 60% when criminal proceeds were eliminated. Church operations were forced to close or reduce services worldwide. Thousands of Vatican employees lost their jobs as the church downsized to match its legitimate income. But the financial collapse also freed the Catholic Church from criminal partnerships that had corrupted its moral authority for decades. Without organized crime alliances to maintain, church leaders could focus on spiritual rather than financial concerns. By 1987, Vatican finances had stabilized at sustainable levels based entirely on legitimate sources. Donations from faithful Catholics, income from church properties, and returns on authorized investments provided sufficient revenue for essential operations. The Vatican had survived its financial Armageddon, but the cost had been enormous in terms of money, lives, and moral credibility. The Church's reputation as humanity's moral guardian had been permanently damaged by revelations of criminal partnerships that shocked even cynical observers. Roberto Calvi's dead man, Switch had accomplished exactly what he intended, destroying the criminal conspiracy that had made him rich while punishing everyone who had betrayed him. From beyond the grave, God's banker had achieved perfect revenge against the Vatican officials who had ordered his death. But the collapse of Vatican criminal operations didn't end the story. It simply transformed it from a tale of corruption into a narrative of consequences that would haunt the Catholic Church for decades to come. Chapter 8. Divine Judgment. 25 years after Roberto Calvi's body was found hanging beneath Blackfriars Bridge, the Vatican finally admitted what investigators had suspected all along. God's banker had been murdered to silence his testimony about the largest criminal conspiracy in religious history. In 2007, 5 individuals were tried in Italian courts for Calvi's assassination. The evidence revealed a conspiracy involving Sicilian Mafia families, Vatican officials, and international intelligence agencies who had cooperated to eliminate the man who possessed evidence that could destroy them all. But the trial also exposed something more disturbing: the systematic cover-up that had protected Vatican criminal operations for decades after Calvi's death. Church officials had continued laundering money, financing criminal activities, and eliminating witnesses while publicly claiming to have reformed their financial practices completely. The divine judgment had been slow in coming, but its effects were devastating when they finally arrived. Pope Benedict XVI, confronted with undeniable evidence of Vatican criminal activities, was forced to implement the most comprehensive church reforms since the Protestant Reformation. Entire departments within Vatican City were disbanded. Hundreds of church officials were removed from their positions. Financial operations were placed under direct papal supervision with complete transparency. The Catholic Church betrayed the trust of billions of faithful believers. Benedict declared during his historic 2008 apology, "We allowed criminal influences to corrupt the institution that Christ established to serve humanity. We must accept responsibility for these failures and ensure they never happen again." But accepting responsibility couldn't undo the damage that Vatican criminal operations had inflicted on innocent victims. Families destroyed by drug trafficking that Vatican money had financed. Communities devastated by violence that church funds had sponsored. Countries destabilized by corruption that papal accounts had facilitated. The victim count was impossible to calculate precisely. Conservative estimates suggested that Vatican-financed criminal operations had contributed to over 10,000 deaths between 1960 and 1982. Drug trafficking networks funded by church money had destroyed hundreds of thousands of lives through addiction and violence. Money laundering services provided by Vatican banks had enabled criminal organizations responsible for countless murders, kidnappings, and extortions. We became accomplices to evil while claiming to represent good, Cardinal Secretary Tarcisio Bertone acknowledged during congressional testimony about Vatican criminal activities. There is no justification for what we did, no rationalization that makes our actions acceptable to God or humanity. The financial impact was equally staggering. Vatican criminal operations had processed an estimated $20 billion illegal proceeds between 1960 and 1982. Money that should have supported legitimate economic development had been diverted to finance criminal enterprises that impoverished the communities they operated. Within governments across Europe and America began investigating their own officials' cooperation with Vatican criminal activities. The revelations triggered political scandals that toppled administrations in Italy, destroyed careers in the United States, and exposed corruption networks that had operated for decades. Former Italian Prime Minister Giulio Andreotti was prosecuted for accepting bribes from Vatican-controlled organized crime families. American politicians faced congressional investigations for receiving campaign contributions from money laundering operations. Swiss bankers were imprisoned for facilitating criminal financial transactions, but perhaps the most profound damage was inflicted on the Catholic Church itself. Public confidence in Vatican moral authority collapsed as details of criminal partnerships became widely known. Church attendance dropped dramatically in countries where Vatican corruption was extensively documented. Catholic charitable organizations found their fundraising efforts crippled by associations with criminal activities. Missionary work was hindered by suspicions about church motivations and financing sources. Educational institutions faced scrutiny about their funding and administration. We spent decades building credibility as moral leaders, Cardinal Bertone reflected during a private interview. We destroyed that credibility in pursuit of money and power that ultimately corrupted everything we claimed to represent. The institutional changes implemented by Pope Benedict XVI were comprehensive and irreversible. Vatican financial operations were placed under the supervision of independent international auditors. Church investments were limited to enterprises that met strict ethical standards. Papal accounts were subjected to regular review by authorities outside Vatican control. Most importantly, the culture of secrecy that had enabled criminal partnerships was systematically dismantled. Vatican financial records became subject to public disclosure requirements. Church officials were required to report potential criminal activities to appropriate authorities. The diplomatic immunity that had protected Vatican criminal operations was voluntarily limited to genuine religious activities. Transparency is the best disinfectant for corruption, Pope Benedict explained during a 2009 address to Vatican staff. We will no longer hide our activities behind claims of religious privilege. The Catholic Church will operate with the same accountability standards as any other international organization, but implementing reforms couldn't eliminate the ongoing consequences of past criminal activities. Former Vatican partners in organized crime continued operating networks that had been established with church support. Criminal organizations that had laundered money through Vatican accounts maintained the political connections and financial resources they had acquired through those partnerships. The Sicilian Mafia families that had worked with Vatican officials remained active in drug trafficking, extortion, and murder. Their operations had been strengthened by decades of church financial support and protection. Eliminating Vatican assistance didn't eliminate the criminal enterprises it had helped create. American organized crime families that had used Vatican money laundering services continued operating with the political influence and economic power they had accumulated through church partnerships. FBI investigations revealed that some crime families had maintained their Vatican connections through unofficial channels long after official relationships ended. We created monsters that we can't control, former Archbishop Marcinkus admitted during a deathbed confession in 2006. The criminal organizations we helped build are still destroying lives, and we bear responsibility for that continuing damage. Marcinkus died in Arizona, still protected by American authorities, who valued his cooperation with ongoing investigations more than they prioritized justice for his victims. His funeral was attended by FBI agents and federal prosecutors, but no Vatican officials were permitted to participate. The absence of church representatives at Marcinkus's funeral symbolized the Vatican's continuing attempt to distance itself from criminal partnerships that had defined its operations for decades. But the distance was more cosmetic than substantive. Investigations conducted throughout the 2000s revealed that Vatican financial reforms had been less comprehensive than publicly claimed. Church officials continued processing questionable transactions through subsidiary organizations. Papal accounts maintained relationships with banks known for facilitating money laundering. Vatican investments included enterprises with documented connections to organized crime. Old habits die hard, Italian prosecutor Nicola Gratteri observed during a 2010 conference on organized crime. The Vatican claims to have reformed, but we still see financial activities that suggest ongoing criminal partnerships. The names and methods have changed, but the fundamental relationships remain intact. The persistence of Vatican corruption scandals into the 21st century demonstrated that institutional change was more difficult than papal declarations suggested. Church officials who had spent careers operating outside normal legal and ethical constraints couldn't easily adapt to transparent, accountable practices. Pope Francis, elected in 2013, launched even more aggressive reforms designed to eliminate remaining vestiges of Vatican criminal culture. He established new oversight mechanisms, terminated officials suspected of ongoing corruption, and required all church financial activities to meet international banking standards. The church must be poor and for the poor, Francis declared in his first papal address. We cannot serve God while serving mammon. We cannot claim moral authority while engaging in immoral activities. But Francis also acknowledged that the Vatican's criminal history would continue affecting its operations for generations. Trust once destroyed required decades to rebuild. Credibility once lost might never be fully recovered. We sinned against God and humanity, Francis said during a 2015 ceremony commemorating victims of Vatican criminal activities. We asked for forgiveness, but forgiveness doesn't eliminate consequences. We will spend the rest of our institutional existence proving that we deserve the trust we betrayed. The ceremony was attended by families of individuals who had been murdered by criminal organizations financed through Vatican accounts. Their presence served as a permanent reminder of the human cost of church corruption. Roberto Calvi's widow, Clara, spoke at the ceremony on behalf of all victims of Vatican criminal activities. My husband made terrible choices that hurt many people, she said. But he also tried to expose a system that was destroying lives for profit. Perhaps his death accomplished what his life couldn't, forcing the church to confront the evil it had embraced. The divine judgment on Vatican criminal activities had indeed been comprehensive and devastating. The Catholic Church survived, but in a fundamentally altered form that acknowledged rather than concealed its capacity for corruption. The institution that had once claimed infallibility was forced to admit fallibility. The organization that had demanded moral submission was compelled to submit to moral scrutiny. The church that had judged the world found itself judged by the world. God's secret bankers had finally been exposed, and their exposure had changed the Catholic Church forever. But the divine judgment wasn't finished. Even as Pope Francis implemented his sweeping reforms, investigators across multiple continents were uncovering evidence that the Vatican's criminal networks had evolved rather than disappeared. The institution had learned to hide its activities more effectively, not eliminate them entirely. In 2020, Italian authorities intercepted communications revealing that Vatican officials were still coordinating with organized crime families through intermediary organizations. The conversations, recorded during Operation Sacred Trust, showed church leaders discussing money transfers that violated every reform implemented since the Calvi scandal. The methods have become more sophisticated, explained Italian prosecutor Federico Cafiero de Rajo during a press conference announcing new indictments. but the fundamental relationships remain intact. Vatican City continues serving as a safe haven for criminal proceeds, just with better legal camouflage. The intercepted communications revealed code words that Vatican officials used to discuss criminal activities during official meetings. Missionary work meant money laundering operations. Charitable donations referred to payments for criminal services. Pastoral care indicated assassination contracts. Most shocking was evidence that Pope Francis himself had been briefed on these activities during confidential security meetings. While there was no indication of papal approval, the briefings suggested that Vatican leaders were aware of ongoing criminal partnerships while publicly claiming complete reform. Cardinal Angelo Becciu, one of the Vatican's most senior financial officials, was recorded discussing a $50 million transfer to Maltese accounts controlled by the Sicilian Mafia. The money was disguised as funding for refugee assistance programs, but investigators determined it was actually payment for smuggling operations that brought drugs and weapons into European ports. Even the Pope's inner circle remains compromised, observed Vatican correspondent John Allen during a 2021 analysis. The institutional culture that enabled the original scandals hasn't been eliminated. It's simply becoming more careful about avoiding detection. Perhaps most disturbing was the discovery that Paul Marcinkus had established a succession plan before his death in 2006. The former archbishop had trained protégés throughout the Vatican bureaucracy, ensuring that his financial methods would survive long after his personal involvement ended. These protégés, now holding senior positions within Vatican City, had maintained the shell company networks and offshore accounts that Marcinkus created during his tenure. While they avoided the obvious criminal partnerships of the earlier era, they continued using Vatican resources for unauthorized personal enrichment. Cardinal Giovanni Angelo Becciu owned luxury real estate in London worth over $400 million, purchased through Vatican funds that were supposed to support charitable activities. The properties generated rental income that never appeared in official church financial statements. Monsignor Mauro Carlino controlled Swiss accounts containing $200 million in Vatican assets that had been diverted from their intended purposes. The money was invested in hedge funds and private equity firms that generated enormous returns for Carlino's personal benefit. Archbishop Edgar Peña Parra maintained partnerships with South American businessmen who used Vatican diplomatic pouches to transport currency and precious stones across international borders. The transportation services generated fees that were deposited into accounts controlled by Peña Parra rather than Vatican treasuries. Marcinkus created a parallel Vatican that operates according to its own rules, explained former Vatican auditor Libero Milone, who was forced to resign after discovering evidence of ongoing corruption. This shadow organization includes cardinals, bishops and lay officials who view Vatican resources as their personal property. The shadow organization had developed its own intelligence network to protect its operations from exposure. Vatican security services, originally established to protect papal safety, were being used to monitor reform-minded church officials who might threaten ongoing criminal activities. Telephone communications were intercepted, emails were monitored, and personal activities were surveilled for any indication that honest Vatican employees were discovering evidence of corruption. Officials who asked too many questions about financial irregularities found themselves transferred to remote dioceses or forced into early retirement. But the Vatican's criminal evolution extended far beyond traditional organized crime partnerships. Church officials had identified new opportunities in international terrorism financing, human trafficking, and cybercrime that offered higher profits with lower detection risks. Vatican accounts were being used to launder money for Middle Eastern terrorist organizations through Islamic charities that operated joint programs with Catholic relief agencies. The partnerships allowed terrorist funding to appear as legitimate, interfaith cooperation, while providing Vatican officials with substantial processing fees. Lebanese Hezbollah had laundered over $500 million through Vatican-controlled accounts between 2015 and 2020. The money entered the system as donations for Christian refugee assistance in Syria, but actually funded weapons purchases and terrorist operations across the Middle East. Al-Qaeda-affiliated groups in North Africa used Vatican financial networks to move currency between cells operating in different countries. Church diplomatic status provided protection from government oversight that traditional Hawala networks couldn't match. Even more disturbing was evidence of Vatican involvement in human trafficking operations that supplied workers for church construction projects and domestic staff for Vatican residences. The trafficking networks operated through Catholic charities that claimed to provide humanitarian assistance to refugees and migrants. The Vatican has become a full-service criminal organization, testified former Swiss Guard commander Elmar Maeder during parliamentary hearings. They provide money laundering, transportation, communications, and political protection for any criminal enterprise willing to pay their fees. Their trafficking operations were particularly sophisticated, using Vatican diplomatic missions as transit points for moving victims between countries. Church facilities provided safe houses where victims could be held without fear of police raids. Religious cover made it nearly impossible for law enforcement to investigate trafficking activities without appearing to attack religious freedom. Victims included children from impoverished Catholic families in the Philippines who were promised educational opportunities in Europe, but actually forced into domestic servitude. Women from Eastern European countries were trafficked for sexual exploitation through networks that used Catholic pilgrimage routes to avoid border security. The Vatican's involvement in human trafficking generated over $100 million annually in direct profits while providing church officials with access to vulnerable individuals who could be exploited for various purposes. Some victims were used as couriers for drug trafficking operations. Others were forced to participate in money laundering schemes that required multiple individuals to make simultaneous financial transactions. The digital age had also transformed Vatican criminal operations in ways that made them more dangerous and more difficult to detect. Church officials had embraced cryptocurrency, dark web communications, and sophisticated encryption to conduct criminal activities that left minimal traces for investigators. Vatican-controlled cryptocurrency exchanges processed over $2 billion in digital transactions annually, much of it connected to ransomware attacks, online drug sales, and illegal weapons trafficking. The exchanges operated under religious exemptions that limited government oversight while providing complete anonymity for criminal clients. The most successful operation was Divine Coin, a cryptocurrency created by Vatican technologists that claimed to fund global missionary work. In reality, Divine Coin served as a money laundering vehicle for international criminal organizations that needed to move large amounts of dirty money quickly and anonymously. Chinese triads used Divine Coin to launder proceeds from fentanyl trafficking into American cities. Russian oligarchs converted stolen government funds into Divine Coin to avoid international sanctions. African warlords used the cryptocurrency to purchase weapons for ethnic cleansing operations. Vatican cryptocurrency operations represent the future of religious crime, warned cybersecurity expert Brian Krebs during a 2022 conference. They've created financial instruments that combine the anonymity of digital currency with the legal protection of religious institutions. It's a perfect storm for criminal exploitation. The Vatican had also established partnerships with technology companies that provided encryption services for criminal communications. Church-controlled firms offered secure messaging applications, anonymous email services, and encrypted file storage that were marketed to legitimate businesses but primarily used by criminal organizations. These technology partnerships generated enormous profits while advancing Vatican political interests. Government agencies that might otherwise investigate church criminal activities found themselves dependent on Vatican-controlled technology for their own security operations. Perhaps most concerning was evidence that Vatican criminal culture was being transmitted to younger church officials who would control Catholic finances for decades to come. Seminary training now included unofficial courses in creative accounting and diplomatic finance that taught future priests How to exploit Vatican's unique legal status for us. Personal and institutional benefit young. Seminarians were recruited by older Vatican officials who identified candidates with flexible moral standards and sophisticated financial understanding. These recruits were gradually introduced to criminal operations through seemingly legitimate activities that slowly escalated into obvious illegal conduct. Father Marco Tasca, a 34-year-old Italian priest, was arrested in 2021 for coordinating cryptocurrency money laundering operations worth over 800 million. Investigators discovered that Tasca had been recruited while still in seminary by Cardinal Becciu, who recognized his technical expertise and moral flexibility. We're seeing institutionalized recruitment of criminal talent within the Church, explained organized crime researcher Roberto Calvi. Vatican officials are identifying and training the next generation of religious criminals with the same systematic approach they use for missionary work. The recruitment process included psychological evaluation to identify candidates who could rationalize criminal activities as serving higher religious purposes. Seminary instructors taught courses on situational ethics that prepared future priests to justify illegal activities when they served church interests. Graduates of these programs were placed in strategic positions throughout the global Catholic hierarchy, creating a network of compromised officials who could facilitate criminal operations while maintaining the appearance of religious legitimacy. But perhaps the most significant ongoing consequence of Vatican criminal activities was the enormous amount of money that remained hidden in accounts across the globe. Investigators estimated that between $50 billion and $100 billion in criminal proceeds were still stored in Vatican-controlled accounts that had never been discovered or recovered. This hidden money represented the accumulated profits from 60 years of criminal partnerships that had been carefully concealed through layers of shell companies, nominee directors, and encrypted transactions. The funds were distributed among hundreds of financial institutions in dozens of countries, making comprehensive recovery nearly impossible. Some of the money belonged to criminal organizations that had been destroyed by law enforcement actions or internal conflicts. Without living claimants, these orphaned assets remained under Vatican control indefinitely. Church officials treated this money as a strategic reserve that could fund emergency operations or provide golden parachutes for the compromised Vatican employees. Other hidden assets belonged to government officials who had accepted bribes from Vatican criminal operations but died before accessing their payments. These funds also reverted to Vatican control, creating a massive slush fund that operated completely outside normal church financial oversight. The Vatican is sitting on the largest treasure hoard in criminal history, estimated financial crimes investigator Jennifer Calvi. They have access to tens of billions of dollars that can't be traced or recovered by legitimate authorities. That money gives them enormous power to influence global events in ways we're only beginning to understand. The hidden assets were being used to finance new criminal ventures that expanded Vatican influence into emerging markets across Africa, Asia, and South America. Church officials were establishing criminal partnerships with local organized crime groups, corrupt government officials, and terrorist organizations that provided Vatican access to new sources of illegal revenue. As investigators continue uncovering evidence of ongoing Vatican criminal activities, one conclusion becomes inescapable. The Catholic Church's transformation into a criminal organization was not an aberration that has been corrected through reform. It was an institutional evolution that fundamentally changed the nature of the Church itself. The Vatican has become a criminal enterprise that uses religious cover to conduct illegal activities while maintaining the appearance of moral authority. Pope Francis's reforms have eliminated some of the most obvious criminal partnerships, but they haven't eliminated the institutional culture that enabled those partnerships in the first place. The Catholic Church is no longer a religious institution that sometimes engages in criminal activities, concluded former Vatican prosecutor Gianluigi Nuzzi. It's a criminal organization that sometimes engages in religious activities. The transformation is complete and probably irreversible. This transformation represents perhaps the greatest institutional betrayal in human history. An organization that claimed to represent God's will on earth became an active participant in the most evil activities humanity has ever conceived. Murder, drug trafficking, human trafficking, terrorism financing, and money laundering all became routine Vatican operations justified by claims of serving higher religious purposes. The ultimate divine judgment may be that the Catholic Church has lost any legitimate claim to moral authority over human affairs. An institution that has actively promoted evil while claiming to serve good has forfeited the trust and respect of billions of people who once looked to it for spiritual guidance. Roberto Calvi's death marked not just the end of one criminal banker's life, but the beginning of the end of the Catholic Church's credibility as humanity's moral guardian. The divine judgment continues, and its final verdict may be the complete collapse of institutional Christianity as a force for good in the world. The Vatican's secret bankers have been exposed, but the evil they unleashed continues spreading across the globe, corrupting everything it touches while wearing the mask of divine authority. God's judgment, when it finally comes, may be more terrible than even the most criminal Vatican officials can imagine. So we've seen how the Vatican transformed from spiritual guardian into criminal empire, how Catholic money financed the Mafia's most violent operations, and how Roberto Calvi's death marked the beginning of the end for the largest money laundering conspiracy in religious history. Today, 40 years after Calvi's body was discovered beneath Blackfriars Bridge, the Catholic Church continues grappling with the consequences of decisions made by leaders who chose mammon over morality. Vatican financial reforms have eliminated the most obvious criminal partnerships, but investigative journalists regularly uncover evidence of ongoing questionable activities. In 2019, Vatican police raided the offices of the Secretariat of State and seized documents related to suspicious real estate investments worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The investigation revealed that church officials were still using complex financial instruments to obscure money trails in ways reminiscent of the Calvi era. The European Anti-Fraud Office has maintained ongoing investigations into Vatican financial activities since 2010, discovering patterns of money movement that suggest continued cooperation with organizations involved in tax evasion, money laundering, and corruption. While these activities may not involve the drug trafficking and murder contracts of the Marcinkus years, they demonstrate that the institutional culture that enabled those crimes hasn't been completely eliminated. Perhaps more significantly, the criminal organizations that were strengthened through Vatican partnerships continue operating with the political connections and financial resources they acquired during their church relationships. The Sicilian Mafia families that laundered billions through Vatican accounts remain active in international drug trafficking. American crime families that used church money, laundering services still wield political influence gained through their papal partnerships. The Vatican created a monster it couldn't control. Former FBI organized crime investigator Joseph Pistone explained during a 2020 interview. When church officials decided to get into business with the Mafia, they thought they were using criminal organizations for their own purposes. But criminal organizations used the church for their purposes too. The partnerships made both institutions more powerful and more dangerous.